I thought catching my wife cheating was the worst thing that could happen to our 21-year marriage. I was wrong. The email she sent me a year after our divorce revealed a betrayal so devastating. It made me question everything I thought I knew about the woman I'd share my life with. My name is Neil Whitman. I'm 52 years old, and up until 3 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I'd built Whitman Industrial Supply from nothing into a multi-million-dollar operation, distributing heavy machinery and equipment to manufacturing plants across the Midwest. 26 years of 16-hour days, missed dinners, and weekend phone calls had paid off. The business was thriving. My 2 kids, Samuel and Sierra, were good students, and my wife, Monica, seemed content with our comfortable life in suburban Chicago. That Tuesday evening in October started like any other. I'd just closed a deal with a steel plant in Gary, Indiana, a contract worth nearly $500,000. I was feeling good, planning to take Monica out for a nice dinner to celebrate. Maybe rekindle some of that spark we'd lost somewhere along the way. I pulled into our driveway around 7:30, later than usual, but not uncommon for me. The house was quiet when I walked in, which struck me as odd. Usually Monica had the TV on in the kitchen while she prepared dinner, or I could hear Sierra practicing piano upstairs. "Monica, you home?" I called out, setting my briefcase down by the front door. No answer. I walked through the living room, toward the kitchen, loosening my tie. That's when I heard it. Laughter coming from upstairs. But it wasn't the kind of laughter I was used to hearing from my wife. This was different, intimate, the way she used to laugh with me when we were dating. My stomach tightened as I climbed the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. The sound was coming from our bedroom, and the door was slightly open. I approached slowly, not wanting to believe what my instincts were telling me. Through the gap in the door, I could see Monica sitting on our bed in a silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas last year. She was holding her phone, clearly on a video call with someone. Her body language was relaxed, flirtatious even, in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. "I can't wait to see you this weekend," Monica was saying to whoever was on the screen. "It's been too long since our last trip." My blood ran cold. "Trip? What trip?" "I know, baby," came a man's voice through the phone speaker. "I've been thinking about you constantly since Chicago." Chicago. The business conference she'd attended last month. The one where she claimed to be networking with potential vendors for her interior design consultancy. I stood frozen in the hallway, watching my wife of 21 years flirting with another man in the bed we shared. She hadn't noticed me yet, too absorbed in her conversation to sense my presence. "Monica," I said quietly, pushing the door open wider. She spun around so fast she nearly dropped the phone, her face going white as she saw me standing there. The guilt in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. "Neil, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered, quickly ending the call. But I'd already heard enough. The casual intimacy, the mention of trips I knew nothing about, the way she'd been glowing lately, pieces of a puzzle I'd been unconsciously ignoring suddenly fell into place. I didn't yell or throw things like you see in movies. Instead, I just stared at her, feeling like I was looking at a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. Monica clutched her phone to her chest, her mouth opening and closing without any words coming out. That silence told me everything. I walked out of that bedroom without another word. There was nothing Monica could say that would make sense of what I just witnessed, and I wasn't about to give her the chance to spin more lies. I went straight to my home office and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. My hands were shaking as I lifted the glass to my lips. 21 years of marriage, and I'd caught my wife red-handed with another man. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was realizing how long I'd been living in a fool's paradise. Around midnight, Monica knocked softly on the office door. "Neil, we need to talk," she said through the wood. "No, we don't," I replied, not looking up from the financial reports I was pretending to review. She opened the door anyway and stepped inside, now dressed in jeans and a sweater. Her eyes were red, but I couldn't tell if it was from crying or just exhaustion. "What you saw tonight, it's complicated," Monica began. I finally looked up at her. "Complicated? You were half naked talking to another man about trips I didn't know you'd taken. Seems pretty straightforward to me." Monica sat down in the chair across from my desk without being invited. "You don't understand the situation we've been in, Neil. We haven't been happy for years. I set down my glass harder than necessary. Don't drag me into your justification for cheating. When's the last time we went out together? Monica shot back. When's the last time you asked me how my day was? You come home, eat dinner in silence, and disappear into this office until bedtime. I stood up, feeling my temper rising. I've been working my rear end off to provide for this family. Every 16-hour day, every missed dinner, every weekend phone call was for you and the kids. Providing isn't the same as being present, Monica said, her voice getting sharper. I needed a husband, not just a paycheck. So you found one somewhere else. I walked around the desk to face her. How long has this been going on? Monica looked away. It started as just talking. Online. About 6 months ago. 6 months. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. And the trip to Chicago. That's when we met in person for the first time, she admitted. Jesus, Monica. I ran my hands through my hair. Do you have any idea what you've done? To us. To Samuel and Sierra. The kids don't have to know anything, Monica said quickly. We can work through this. Go to counseling. I made a mistake, but dash. A mistake. I interrupted. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice. Multiple choices over 6 months. Monica stood up, tears starting to flow now. I know I hurt you, but I was lonely. I felt invisible in my own marriage. You were invisible because you chose to be, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Instead of talking to me about problems in our marriage, you went looking for attention somewhere else. So what happens now? Monica asked, wrapping her arms around herself. I looked at this woman I'd shared my life with for over 2 decades, and I realized I didn't know her at all. The Monica I'd married would never have done this. But maybe that Monica had never really existed. Now you sleep in the guest room, I said. Tomorrow, we figure out what comes next. But deep down, I already knew what came next. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, and some trust, once broken, can never be rebuilt. The next morning, I called my attorney before Monica even woke up. Richard Steinberg had handled my business contract for years, and I trusted him to be straight with me. Neil, I'm sorry to hear this, Richard said over the phone. How long has this been going on? At least 6 months that I know of. I replied, sitting in my office with the door locked. But I'm starting to think it might be longer. What makes you say that? I've been thinking about that all night. There were signs I ignored. Late nights, working on design projects. Weekend trips to visit clients that seemed excessive. She's been distant for over a year now. Do you want to try counseling first? Richard asked. No, I said without hesitation. I caught her red-handed. Richard, there's no coming back from this. After hanging up with Richard, I did something I probably should have done months ago. I started paying attention to details. Monica's credit card statements, her phone bills, her calendar. What I found made my blood boil. Hotel charges in Chicago I didn't know about. Expensive dinners for 2 when she claimed to be eating alone. Phone calls to the same number lasting hours, always when I was at work. But the real kicker was when I found receipts for lingerie I'd never seen her wear. Victoria's Secret, Fredericks of Hollywood, hundreds of dollars worth of items that weren't for my benefit. When Monica came downstairs around 10, she found me sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of statements spread out in front of me. What's all this? She asked, pouring herself coffee. Your spending habits, I said, not looking up. Interesting reading. Monica's face went pale as she saw the hotel receipts. Neil, I can explain dash. Can you? I stood up, holding one of the receipts. The Marriott in Chicago, September 15th. You told me you were staying at the conference hotel. I was, Monica said weakly. The conference was at the Hyatt, I replied. I checked. Monica sat down heavily in the chair across from me. For the first time since this whole mess started, she looked defeated. How long? I asked. And don't lie to me anymore. I'm done with lies. 2 years, she whispered. 2 years. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Jesus, Monica. 2 years. It started online, she said, tears flowing now. Just chatting at first. Then video calls. The first time we met in person was last year. During your supposed sister's wedding in Detroit. I asked. Monica nodded, unable to meet my eyes. I felt something inside me shut down completely. This wasn't just an affair. It was a double life. For 2 years, she'd been lying to my face every single day. I want you out, I said quietly. Neil, please dash. Pack your things and go stay with your parents. I'll have Richard draw up separation papers. Monica looked up at me with desperate eyes. What about Samuel and Sierra? What about them? I asked. You should have thought about them before you decided to destroy their family. Samuel was the one who figured it out first. At 17, he was sharp enough to notice the tension in the house and smart enough to put the pieces together when he overheard part of a phone conversation between Monica and her mother. He cornered me in the garage Saturday morning while I was working on my truck, something I did when I needed to think with my hands. Dad, Samuel said, leaning against my workbench, is Mom having an affair? I stopped what I was doing and looked at my son. He had my eyes, but Monica's stubborn chin, and right now he looked older than his 17 years. What makes you ask that? I said carefully. Come on, Dad, Samuel replied. She's been staying at Grandma's for 3 days. You look like someone died. And I heard her on the phone yesterday, apologizing to someone named Nash. Nash. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. So that was his name. I set down my wrench and faced my son. Samuel deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as I could give him without destroying his relationship with his mother. Yes, I said simply. She is. Samuel nodded like he'd been expecting that answer. How long? 2 years. Damn, Samuel said, then looked at me apologetically. Sorry. It's okay, son. I've been thinking worse things than that. We stood in silence for a moment, both of us processing what this meant for our family. What happens now? Samuel asked. I don't know yet, I admitted. Your mother and I are going to separate. Probably divorce. But that doesn't change anything between you kids and us. Sierra doesn't know yet, does she? Samuel asked. No, and I'd rather tell her together with your mother when the time is right. Samuel picked up one of my tools, turning it over in his hands. I'm not surprised, about Mom. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? She's been different the last year or so, Samuel explained. Happy in a way that didn't include us, if that makes sense. Like she had some secret that made her smile. My son's observation stung because it was so accurate. Monica had been glowing lately, and I'd been fool enough to think it was because she was content with our life. Are you okay? I asked Samuel. He shrugged. I'm 17, Dad. I'll be going to college next year anyway. But Sierra is going to be messed up about this. We'll help her through it, I said. Yeah, Samuel agreed. Then he looked at me directly. For what it's worth, Dad, I don't blame you. I've seen how hard you work for us. Coming from my son, those words meant more than any apology Monica could offer. Monica moved back in with her parents, but that didn't stop her from trying to manipulate the situation. She called constantly, sent lengthy text messages explaining how sorry she was, and even showed up at my office twice trying to convince me to give her another chance. What she didn't know was that I'd hired a private investigator. Tony Marcelli came recommended by Richard, my attorney, former police detective, specialized in adultery cases. Within a week, he'd uncovered more than I'd bargained for. Your wife's been busy, Tony said, sitting across from my desk with a thick folder in his hands. This Nash character, his full name, is Damian Cross. He's 38, divorced, works in medical equipment sales. How do they meet? I asked. Online dating site, Tony replied. She created a profile 2.5 years ago using her maiden name. 2.5 years. Even longer than I'd thought. There's more, Tony continued, opening the folder. Bank record shows she opened a separate checking account 18 months ago. She's been funneling money from your joint account, small amounts, but consistent. About $2,000 a month. $2,000. I felt my blood pressure rising. What's she been using it for? Hotels, restaurants, clothes, gifts for him, Tony said. And there's something else you need to see. He handed me a photograph that made my stomach drop. Monica and Damian Cross at some restaurant, looking cozy and intimate. But that wasn't what shocked me. It was the timestamp. The photo was taken 3 weeks ago, after I'd already caught her and thrown her out. She's still seeing him. I asked. Never stopped, Tony confirmed. They met twice this week alone. I stared at the photo, feeling any remaining sympathy I had for Monica evaporate completely. She'd been begging me for forgiveness while continuing to see her lover behind my back. There's one more thing, Tony said. Cross has been married twice before. Both marriages ended due to his affairs. Your wife isn't his first rodeo. That evening, I sat Samuel and Sierra down for the conversation I'd been dreading. Your mother and I are getting divorced, I said gently. Sierra, my 14-year-old, started crying immediately. Is it because of us? No, sweetheart, I said, pulling her close. This has nothing to do with you or Samuel. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they love. Samuel, who already knew the truth, put his arm around his sister. Mom made some bad decisions, Sierra. Dad's not the one who messed up. Can't you fix it? Sierra asked through her tears. Some things can't be fixed, I said, my heart breaking for her. But what won't change is how much your mother and I love you both. The next day, Monica showed up at the house while I was at work, and the kids were at school. When I got home, I found her going to my home office. What are you doing? I demanded. Monica spun around, holding some of my business files. I have a right to know about our finances. Our finances. I took the files from her hands. You mean the finances you've been stealing from for 2 years? Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I walked to my desk and pulled out the bank statements Tony had given me. $2,000 a month, Monica. For 2 years. That's $48,000 you've taken from our family to fund your affair. Monica's composure finally broke. I needed that money. You don't understand what it's been like living with you. Living with me? I asked incredulously. I'm not the one who's been cheating and lying and stealing. You're cold, Neil, Monica said, her voice rising. You come home, you eat, you work, you sleep. When's the last time you told me you loved me? When's the last time you gave me a reason to? I shot back. The worst part about Monica's betrayal wasn't just the personal devastation. It was the professional implications. She'd been handling the books for Whitman Industrial Supply for the past 5 years, and now I had to question everything. I spent the weekend going through every financial record, every invoice, every transaction she'd touched. What I found made me sick. She'd been embezzling from the business too. Small amounts at first, 500 here, 1,000 there, marked as business expenses or supplier payments that never actually happened. Over 3 years, she'd stolen nearly $75,000 from the company. Monday morning, I called Richard immediately. This changes everything, Richard said after I'd explained what I'd discovered. Business embezzlement is a felony. She could face serious jail time. I don't want to destroy her, I said, but I can't let this slide either. You need to protect yourself and your business, Richard advised. File a police report. Document everything. If you don't take action, you could be seen as complicit. That afternoon, I had to have the hardest conversation of my life with my father-in-law, Vernon Pruitt. Vernon was 71 years old, a retired steel worker who'd always treated me like the son he never had. He'd helped me get my first big contract 20 years ago, and I respected him more than almost any man I knew. Vernon, I need to tell you something about Monica, I said when he answered his door. We sat in his living room, and I laid out everything. The affair, the stolen money, the lies. Vernon listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing harder with each revelation. How much did she take? He asked finally. From the business? $75,000. From our personal accounts? Another $48,000. Vernon was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something I didn't expect. He reached into his wallet and pulled out his checkbook. What are you doing? I asked. I'm writing you a check for $125,000, Vernon said, his voice steady. Vernon, no. I can't let you dash. You can and you will, he interrupted. My daughter stole from you. That makes it my responsibility to make it right. She's not your responsibility, I said. Vernon looked up at me with steel in his eyes. I raised her to be better than this. I failed somewhere along the way, and now you're paying the price. You didn't fail, I assured him. Monica made her own choices. Maybe, Vernon said, continuing to write the check. But I won't let her destroy the business you built. You've been more of a son to me than she's been a daughter. He handed me the check, and I saw his hands were shaking slightly. There's one more thing you should know, Vernon said. Monica's mother and I are cutting her out of our will. What she did to you and those kids is unforgivable. The loyalty from my father-in-law meant more to me than he'd ever know. It also showed me something important. Even Monica's own father recognized that what she'd done was beyond redemption. 2 weeks after filing for divorce, I discovered that Monica and Damian Cross had escalated their relationship in a way that threatened everything I'd built. Tony, my private investigator, called me at work with urgent news. Neil, we have a problem, Tony said. Cross has been taking photos of your financial documents. Someone's been feeding him inside information about your business. What kind of information? I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. Client lists, supplier contracts, profit margins. The kind of stuff that could destroy your competitive advantage if it fell into the wrong hands. I sat down heavily in my office chair. Monica. That's my guess, Tony confirmed. She had access to everything before you threw her out. Question is, what's Cross planning to do with it? I found out the next day when 3 of my biggest clients called to cancel their contracts. Each one gave the same vague excuse about exploring other options and reassessing their supply chain needs. But when I pressed Jim Patterson from Midwest Manufacturing, a guy I'd been doing business with for 15 years, he finally told me the truth. Neil, someone's been calling our purchasing department, Jim said reluctantly. They're offering the same equipment you provide, but at 20% below your prices. They knew details about our current contracts that only you should know. Who was calling? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Guy named Cross. Said he worked for a new distribution company called Superior Industrial Supply. My blood boiled. Damian Cross wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using information she'd given him to destroy my business. I called Richard immediately. This is industrial espionage, Richard said after I explained the situation. It's a federal crime. We can not only stop him, but we can sue for damages. Do it, I said without hesitation. Whatever it takes. That evening, I sat Samuel and Sierra down for another difficult conversation. Kids, I need you to know that your mother's friend is trying to hurt our family business, I said carefully. Samuel's jaw tightened. What do you mean? He's using information that only someone in our family would know to steal our customers. Mom told him, Sierra asked, her voice small. It looks that way, I admitted. Samuel stood up, pacing to the window. So, she's not just cheating on you. She's trying to destroy everything we have. Your mother made some very bad choices, I said. But we're going to fight back. What can we do? Samuel asked. We're going to show them that the Whitman family doesn't back down from a fight. The next morning, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. Instead of just playing defense, I went on the offensive. I called every client Cross had contacted and made them an offer they couldn't refuse. A 5-year contract at 15% below my current rates, with a guarantee that I'd match any competitor's price for the duration of the contract. It cost me short-term profits, but it secured my client base and cut Cross off at the knees. Then I called a press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, I said to the trade journalists who'd gathered in my office, I want to warn the industrial supply community about a new company called Superior Industrial Supply, run by Damian Cross. This individual has been using stolen proprietary information to undercut legitimate businesses. The story ran in 3 trade publications that week. Within days, Cross's reputation in the industry was destroyed. But Monica wasn't done fighting dirty yet. Monica's next move was so low, so calculating, that it made me realize I'd never really known the woman I'd been married to. She accused me of domestic violence. I was at the office when Richard called with the news. Neil, Monica's filed for a restraining order, Richard said, his voice grim. She claims you've been threatening her, and that she fears for her safety. That's insane, I said. I haven't even spoken to her in 2 weeks. I know, but the judge has to take these allegations seriously. There's a hearing scheduled for tomorrow. That night, I had to explain to Samuel and Sierra why police officers were at our door serving me with papers. Dad, you never hurt Mom, Sierra said, tears in her eyes. I know, sweetheart, I said, pulling her close. But sometimes people lie when they're desperate. Samuel was furious. She's trying to make you look like the bad guy, so she can get more money in the divorce. Maybe, I agreed, but we're going to handle this the right way, with truth and evidence. The hearing the next day was a nightmare. Monica took the stand and claimed I'd been emotionally abusive for years, that I'd threatened to destroy her financially, and that she was afraid I might become violent. She was a good actress. I had to give her that. Tears at just the right moments, a trembling voice when she described her fear of me. But Richard was ready for her. Mrs. Whitman, Richard said during cross-examination, isn't it true that you've been having an affair with Mr. Damian Cross for over 2 years? That has nothing to do with Dash. Please answer the question. Have you been having an affair? Yes, but Dash. And isn't it true that Mr. Cross has been using confidential information about your husband's business to steal his clients? Monica's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The judge could see what this was really about. And Mrs. Whitman, Richard continued, when exactly did these alleged threats occur? Because my client has been staying at his brother's house for the past week to avoid any contact with you. Monica's story began to fall apart under scrutiny. She couldn't provide specific dates or witnesses to my supposed threats. Her own testimony revealed that our interactions had been minimal and conducted through attorneys. The judge denied her restraining order request. Mrs. Whitman, the judge said sternly, making false accusations of domestic violence is a serious matter. These allegations appear to be motivated by divorce proceedings rather than genuine safety concerns. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt like I won a major battle. But I also realized that Monica was willing to destroy my reputation, my relationship with my children, and my standing in the community to get what she wanted. The woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who would stop at nothing to win. But she'd picked the wrong man to underestimate. I'd built my business from nothing, survived recessions and competitive attacks, and I wasn't about to let her destroy everything I'd worked for. The gloves were off now. It was time to show Monica what real hardball looked like. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I made the decision that would end Monica's games forever. She'd been fighting the financial settlement tooth and nail, claiming she deserved more money despite her theft and betrayal. What she didn't know was that I'd been planning my next move carefully. During our marriage, we'd accumulated assets in various accounts and investments. The court had ordered a 50-50 split, but there were ways to protect what was rightfully mine without breaking any laws. I liquidated my business holdings and restructured everything under a new corporation with Samuel as a 51% partner. At 17, he was old enough to understand what we were doing and why. "Dad, is this legal?" Samuel asked as we sat in the attorney's office. "Completely legal," Richard confirmed. "Your father is giving you a majority stake in a new company. Monica has no claim to assets that didn't exist during the marriage." Within a month, I transferred all my equipment, contracts, and client relationships to Whitman and Son Industrial Supply. Monica would get half of what the old company was worth on paper, but that company no longer held any real assets. She hired 3 different attorneys trying to challenge the restructuring, but each one told her the same thing. What I'd done was perfectly legal. The final blow came when her own father, Vernon, made an announcement at a family gathering that Sierra later told me about. "Grandpa told everyone that Mom embarrassed the whole family," Sierra said during one of our dinners together. "He said she chose a criminal over her own children." Vernon had been true to his word about cutting Monica out of his will. When he passed away 8 months later, Monica discovered that her inheritance, nearly $500,000, was going to be split between Samuel, Sierra, and a scholarship fund Vernon had established. Even in death, Vernon was protecting his grandchildren from their mother's poor choices. The business restructuring also allowed me to do something I'd always wanted, make Samuel a real partner. At 18, he was already showing good business instincts and a work ethic that reminded me of myself at his age. "Son, you've earned this," I told him the day we signed the final partnership papers. "You stood by me when it mattered most." By the time Monica realized what I'd done, it was too late. She'd lost not just her marriage and her children's respect, but also her financial security and her family's legacy. The woman who'd thought she could have it all ended up with almost nothing. 1 year after our divorce was finalized, I received an email that changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage with Monica. I was in my office late on a Thursday evening when the message appeared in my inbox. The subject line made my blood run cold. "The truth you deserved to know years ago." The email was from Monica, but what she confessed was far worse than anything I discovered during our divorce proceedings. "Neil," the message began, "I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But there's something I should have told you long ago, and I can't carry this secret anymore. The affair with Damien wasn't my first. I've been cheating on you for 15 years. 15 years. My hands shook as I continued reading. It started when Sierra was just a baby. You were working so much, building the business, and I felt invisible. I met someone online, and it turned into a physical relationship that lasted 2 years. After that ended, there were others. Short affairs, weekend flings, men I met through work. The room seemed to spin as I processed what she was telling me. 15 years of betrayal. 15 years of living a lie. "I know this doesn't change anything now," Monica continued, but I needed you to understand that our problems weren't just about the last few years. I stopped being faithful to our marriage almost from the beginning, and I'm sorry." She went on to detail specific affairs, specific lies she'd told, specific times when I'd suspected something but convinced myself I was being paranoid. Every business trip, every girl's night out, every weekend she claimed to need space. Most of them had been covers for her affairs. The most devastating revelation came at the end of the email. "I want you to know that Samuel and Sierra are definitely your children. I had DNA tests done years ago because I wasn't sure, but they're yours. I thought you should know that, at least." She'd had DNA tests done because she wasn't sure if my children were actually mine. The betrayal was so complete, so thorough, that it took my breath away. But as I sat in my office that night, rereading her confession, I realized something important. This email wasn't just Monica finally telling the truth. It was her final attempt to hurt me. She wanted me to know that our entire marriage had been a sham. She wanted me to doubt every memory, every moment of happiness we'd shared. She wanted me to feel like the biggest fool who ever lived. Instead, I felt free. All the guilt I'd carried about my failed marriage, all the self-doubt about whether I could have done something different, all the wondering if I'd been too harsh in my judgment of her, it all disappeared. Monica had never been the woman I thought I'd married. The real Monica had been a liar and a cheater from almost the very beginning. The woman I'd fallen in love with had never really existed. I deleted the email without responding and went home to my children. "Dad, you look different tonight," Sierra said when I walked in the door. "Different how?" I asked. "Lighter," she said. "Like you're not carrying something heavy anymore." She was right. For the first time since discovering Monica's betrayal, I felt completely at peace with my decision to end our marriage. I'd fought for my children, protected my business, and refused to let her destroy everything I'd built. Some men might have been crushed by learning the full extent of their ex-wife's betrayal, but I saw it as the final proof that I'd made the right choice. Monica had thought she was delivering a killing blow with that email. Instead, she'd given me the gift of absolute certainty. I was better off without her. My children were better off without her. And our future was brighter because she was no longer part of it.